read the Mendocino College Land Acknowledgement. In the spirit of community, we acknowledge that Mendocino Lake Community College District encompasses the ancestral and present homeland of the indigenous nations of Mendocino and Lake counties, including the Caddo, Comcow, Nomlaki, Pomo, Pit River, Sinkyone, Wailaki, and Yuki. We recognize, honor, and respect these nations as the traditional stewards of the lands and water on which the district is now present. Yeah. So I will turn it over to Bernadette.
Yes. So Chumai, He'en Maya Iwa, Toshishima Emta Bernadette Smith, and I come from the Manchester Band of Pomo Indians. That's what we like to call the coastal Pomo people. As you may know, there are many factions of Pomo throughout Sonoma, Mendocino, and Lake County. I make up a small part of that people up in the North Coast, California. As I spoke with you earlier about my grandmother coming from Kashaya, my grandfather's from Manchester, Point Arena. So in turn, I'm from both those places, but it's just basically coastal Pomo. That's who encompass that area. And today I'm going to talk to you guys about my work that I've done with the acorn, specifically with the tan oak out of Mendocino County. I know that there's many different oak trees throughout California and species even here in Lake County, but specifically the kind that my people use and still use today is the tan oak tree. Unfortunately, that is one of the trees that's the most endangered from sudden oak death right now. So it's kind of one of those urgencies for our people to kind of stand up and start protecting those trees that are remaining. And I'll get a little into that more after. I do have a short film I'm going to show here today. So throughout my work in California with the tan oak trees, I've kind of, had my hand in a lot of different aspects of protection of the tree. I did get to work closely with a group from out of New Mexico. They're called Dancing Earth. So they're an indigenous contemporary dance, institution. So they teach and honor the earth through their dancing, using body movements to tell stories of indigenous communities. So I had written a play that ended up turning into a contemporary dance, and we performed it on Alcatraz at their first Indigenous Peoples Day gathering. I think that was back in 2017 or 18. I can't quite remember, and I apologize for that. But through that work, we did get to have this small film made. This was through a small dance studio out in San Francisco, Mission Theater. So they filmed this and sponsored this film to be made. It's basically about the tan oak tree and my work that I've been doing. Also, it kind of does a small collaboration with the West Berkeley Shamound movement that's happening out there to kind of regain some indigenous territories out in the Bay Area with Karina Gold. This was at Segurate Land Trust, this film that was made, and it's a really small first step for the Ohlone people out there to kind of regain some access to traditional lands and able to replant some traditional medicines and accessibility for their Native people to gather at those areas. So it's kind of a collaboration between the work that I'm doing, trying to regain land for us to be able to plant our traditional medicines and take care and steward those lands and the work that they're doing out in the Ohlone country. And so today I'll just show this short film, and it's been played throughout California at different film festivals. It's won a few recognitions for being one of the powerful short film talking about the tan oak and the acorn.
One thing that does connect us all California Indians, we all know that this acorn is something that we all share. They think that these methods and these traditions are just traditions and history, but they're not. They're life skills.
Ishkale.
That's what the we call the acorn tree. That's the name of it in our language. So it's translated to beautiful tree. Oh, that one always gets me.
I never had access to any land. It's only been since I became a part of Segorte 2.5 years ago where I actually got to put my hands in the dirt for the first time.
In the way that I account that I am a California Native person in the 21st century, I recognize that it could be a challenge to honor my ancestors in the old way.
On our reservation, we don't have indigenous plants growing like you think they would. Seeing what's happening here, and even in this urban area, you guys are able to grow stuff and put things in the earth and actually see something, these medicines growing. It's very inspiring. When I realized the Tanuk tree was the acorn tree, and I started reading more, and I realized the fight that the non-natives were upset about was just the fire hazard. And it wasn't about, that's like a sacred tree for us, that these people are spraying herbicide. And it just made me envision the story of the acorn in this dance form to bring awareness. It's a real story. It's not a creation story that somebody told them, this is what's happening right now.
This is for my family.
I will do as much as I can to honor my ancestors to the best of my ability and to attempt to be a good ancestor in training.
I have to feed my children. My father needs a spiritual nourishment. This is how I love my family. They can depend on me. I honor them.
A protection plant.
They honor me.
Is this a medicinal plant?
This is also a medicinal plant and it's related to chamomile. The way that you will tell the difference is by the leaves.
I'll pass this gift to the next generation. This is how I honor Creator for the blessing of the acorn.
But nobody does it like coastal. I love it. They're not quite like us.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that short film. That took a lot of work. So the movements you were seeing there between me and the old me and the young girl who was dancing, that's my little cousin Shirley. It was important to introduce the younger Native children to what I like to call indigenous contemporary style dancing. So it's a form of storytelling using our bodies, some traditional elements as well, but kind of as a secret undertone, so only other Native people would be able to really recognize those movements. So to the untrained, maybe non-Native people, they wouldn't really understand what was happening. They maybe looked like some yoga moves. I've heard it looked like yoga, things like that, but there were actually movements that really happened during acorn processing time. Some traditional song was used, but we really tried to steer away from not using a lot of traditional sacred song and things like that during the creation of those plays, but more of contemporary and as a learning tool. So The song that you may have heard in the background was a contemporary song that myself and another woman had composed specifically for that dance. So we got to access archives through UC Berkeley to hear some of our ancestors speaking language. So we did go ahead and use those recordings and incorporated it into the song. I did speak a little bit of what, spoken word during the play to kind of give a little bit of context to the song. So as you may have heard, it was kind of low, but I like to say about the process of the acorn and what it really was prior to today, which was a very important piece of our history. It was a very vital part of our survival, and it was, part of our nutritional values that we had every day. Today, not a lot of people eat it. I would say if we had a group of 10, maybe one has tried it. And that's not good enough for us. We really want to reintroduce traditional foods back into our daily lives, daily diets. And that's really hard to do. Not only because our palates have changed over the years, but accessibility to these traditional foods to gathering sites is very limited. As you may know, when we were placed on reservations, those areas weren't ideal for us. Those sometimes were the most rural and wasted of lands that they put us on. Sometimes it was more to benefit the ranchers and things like that, to maybe have some help with their ranches, so they placed reservations according to that need as well, not really the need of the native. That being said, a lot of our traditional plants and medicines weren't available to us in those areas. They didn't naturally grow there, so we didn't really have access to them or ways to preserve that tradition through doing it daily. So that kind of had a huge effect on our people. I know my reservation in Point Arena is very low elevation in terms of where the tan oak tree likes to thrive and can grow. So we were very limited to access to the tan oak tree. As I grew up, I remember gathering a few times. It wasn't very often. I had one aunt, and we were coming over to Ukiah for something that had nothing to do with acorn, but she had pulled over off the side of the road and showed me what a tan oak tree was, and pick up these acorns. That was one time when I was 14 years old, and that was it. I didn't gather another acorn until I was about, I would say, 27 or so. And, it was something I had to go out and learn on my own. I took interest in it. I did see something in the newspaper about what was Measure V. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that out of Mendocino County. It was something that was brought up to stop the use of herbicides from the Mendocino forestry companies. It wasn't to protect the tan oak. It was mostly because of the fire hazard that was happening during the injection of herbicide to the trees, leaving hundreds of trees standing dead, which were susceptible to fire. And that was kind of the big concern for the Mendocino community, was that fire hazard. Me learning about the tan oak tree and Measure V, and basically not ever hearing anything about the native perspective of what that means for us as far as killing off those trees. And what does that mean for the native? What does that mean for traditional food survival and sustainability? And so I've kind of been on a journey since then, and that was many years ago, say 2015 or so. And we've just been slowly working toward spreading that awareness about sudden oak death, and then of course these forestry practices that are what they call hack and squirt. I don't know if anybody's heard of that term. It's a method of frilling. So it's a term that they use in the forestry companies. It's basically they hack into the tree and they inject it with herbicide, and it kills the tree from the inside out. There hasn't been any, Measure V did pass for them to stop doing that, but there has been no implementation of it stopping. So it has to go beyond, I guess, our city councils and things like that to a higher up. So that's where it becomes very important that we spread this knowledge or this need throughout, the world of education, so that our Native people who are in the positions to change things legislatively can do that. I'm just one person. I haven't really gone into that next level, which I'm starting to really understand that that's where I need to go to make this change. I'm a traditional singer. I practice our traditional ways, and I've gone this far being able to spread awareness kind of through song, and then I'm a dancer as well, so I've been able to tell that story on that platform. But now it's time to kind of make a difference and get a little bit more serious about changing this legislatively. The forestry companies are extremely powerful. They have a lot of money backing them, and it's really hard to get the laws to change in our favor against them. Although we do have something that other people don't have, which is being native, and that's a very powerful tool. You know, that's something that we can make a lot of change with, just being that voice. But it's really hard, and it seems to have been a struggle for us to kind of connect collectively as Native people, to kind of stand in front and say this is something that needs to be addressed. So, and when it comes to oak trees, the tan oak is just one little part of that big family. So it's really hard to get a lot of the Native people to kind of join in. They don't see that effect that we see on the coast, you know, coming with their tan oak trees or their oak trees. They see so many, and just outside here there's so many already falling, and I'm like, wow, you know, that's so accessible. So that's just something that isn't always available everywhere. So I'll just go back to Point Arena. Like I said, we don't have anything on our reservation. All the land that does have the big tan oak trees, it's private property, you know, that's fenced off. In that area, a lot of marijuana is grown, and it's kind of dangerous to go and wander off on people's properties without letting them know, because of those, you know, illegal pot farms that are out there in the mountains. So it's kind of dangerous. We have since made some allies with different landowners that have opened up their properties to let us come and gather there. I mean, and it's such beautiful, beautiful trees, but unfortunately in the last 3 years, sudden oak death has taken its toll. And we see, I mean, trees that are about 400 or 500 years old that are just, limbs are falling off, they're dying off. And it's a real shame to see that, and it's really hurtful to know that those trees are gone, you know, trees that fed my ancestors. I've been given gifts of pestles, things like that are found underneath these beautiful giant trees. That kind of proved to me what we already knew. If you see these big trees, obviously our people were there gathering from them. But it kind of solidified what we were feeling that whole time in that area in Point Arena, which is up on this hill called Eureka Hill Road. There's an old Air Force base up there. And I don't know if you guys know or are aware that most of the Air Force bases or any Army bases, mostly Air Force bases, have been put on top of sacred sites, sacred mountains for Native people throughout California. I'm assuming throughout the United States as well. And so there's no different. The one in Point Arena is put on top of a sacred site, an old village site that we would host many, about 30 to 40 other tribelets would come and gather there and live there during the acorn season, which is right now. And, you know, to see what it is now is a wasteland. It's toxic soil from old light bulbs that were from the 50s that have, you know, polluted our water, polluted our grounds, everything up there. It's a wasteland, and you know, it's pretty hard to see. It's a pretty hard, sad sight to see, but there are a few trees that are still remaining. So we took it upon ourselves to rebirth a festival that had happened over 75 years ago in Point Arena. Speaking with elders and stuff from my community, I was able to I guess just bring back that ceremony for the acorn. It took some fighting to do with the Air Force Base. They didn't want to let us on the property. Let me just let you know that that property was open, gates wide open for 30 years, 40 years. It's been closed down, non-operable, but open. People would go party there, shoot their guns off there, do donuts, everything there. The second we went in there to wanting to have a ceremony on there, gates shut, locks. You come on, you're getting arrested. I mean, it was like a huge setback for us. So it took a lot of fighting, a lot of aggressive, you know, we're not taking this is our right to be here. I had to, you know, the Religious Freedom Act was brought up. There was some other things that were uncovered where not only were the U.S. Army or government supposed to allow us to be there, but they were supposed to help us have those ceremonies if there was on sacred sites. So all in all, we were able to have that. It's happened for 7 years straight, and it was a really big defeat. We do want to acquire the land. That's the plan. That was the plan from the beginning, was to not only develop a relationship with the land and with the Army base, but to kind of reintroduce the acorn to the people, to the Native people. It's been something that has gone by the wayside for a long time. Like I was telling you in the beginning, 1 of 10 maybe, our elders maybe haven't had it in 40, 50 years. It's such a delicacy. Not a lot of people make it. A lot of people gather it, but that's just the very beginning of the process, which that's turning to be problematic for us on the coast as is. We don't find many healthy trees. It's not something that we can just go into the parking lot and see, hundreds of acorns falling. But we have to really search and climb and ask permission to go on lands, things like that. And a lot of Native people are very prideful, and they don't want to ask to go on a land. They don't feel like they have to ask permission to do so, but that's reality. And I felt that way in the beginning as well. And I found myself kind of hitting roadblocks as to why my people didn't want to stand with me and say, hey, this is wrong. We want access. We want to protect this tree. I thought it was going to be a no-brainer. I thought, everybody loves acorn. Everybody's going to want to help. Everybody's going to feel like the same energy to fight. But it's been very hard to get people motivated and fired up to protect the tan oak tree. And that part of that, I found myself being angry with my own people. Like, why don't you guys want to listen? Why don't you feel like this? It took me a lot of prayer and self-reflection to understand that, just because I feel strongly about something, that doesn't mean, the next man will as well. We all have different callings and different places here on earth, I believe. So I just kept going, and I thought bringing back the festival and having people come and gather and eat acorn and see this place, it would kind of get people fired up, and it did. Now everybody looks forward to this festival happening. Everybody, I've seen so much more people gathering acorn, posting on social media their acorn gathering, and I've hosted a lot of different talks and instruction and like classes for people to come and learn. So my main focus is not only getting the acorn back into the diets, but kind of teaching people through the process of gathering acorn and processing the acorn, the old values that our people had instilled way back when, which is the love for your family, for one. A mother's love for her family is so strong, and it can keep a mother on the right path. We have a lot of women in our tribes that go astray. They go, they turn to other, like substance abuse, alcohol abuse, they leave their children, things like that. But with these old traditional values and ways of life, those naturally instill those things into a woman. And I can only speak for the female part of the acorn gathering. The process it's a long process, but it's a beautiful process. You have time with other women, you sit and gather and you communicate, you talk about problems, you can share laughs, things like that. It's a very communal thing that used to happen, which is very therapeutic within itself. It's so time consuming to crack and to smash them nowadays. I do teach it in a contemporary form, so I have my Ninja blender, I have all these different tools, that get it done quick. But just even that, it still takes a long time to dry them. It's all a very slow process. But the outcome is this beautiful food, this nutritional food. And it's not just nutritional, it's a spiritual food. And I'm a witness to that. My father, he was on dialysis. My father lost limbs. He was, very sick. And at times he couldn't even get up to go to dialysis because he was so weak. And I would make him the acorn mush. That's what we call it. To'o is the traditional word for us, the soup. And he'd eat a bowl and he'd say, okay, I can get ready now. That's how I've witnessed the miracle and the beauty and the spiritual nourishment of the acorn. I took my father to a shaman in Kashaya when he was first getting sick with dialysis and kidney failure, and he did advise my dad to eat acorn. You know, as he was praying for my dad, he told him, you need to eat acorn, it's a spiritual food, it'll feed your spirit and make it strong. So that was another reason why I pushed so hard to get the tan oak protected, to share with my Native community and non-Native community the value of the acorn. It's not only for us nutritionally, but spiritually, it's so good for us. So I've watched my dad eat it, I've made it for him, you know, and I've seen it with my own eyes that it does help. It's a very powerful food. And I believe it's only a matter of time before it starts making its way into Whole Foods and different things like that, and they're gonna start, unfortunately, taxing us a lot of money for it, and maybe then protecting the tree once there's a monetary value on it. And through Mendocino Redwood Company, when I spoke with them about some word and language they used about the tan oak tree, saying it was a weed, that it had no value, I said, you know, I don't appreciate you saying that because it's so valuable to us, to the Native people. And he's like, well, it's not, you know, monetary. And I said, well, that has nothing to do with what we consider valuable, obviously, you know. But that's just the perspective on it. So unfortunately, I do feel that in the future, if people start processing and eating it and seeing all the nutritional value and great things about it, that they might start protecting the tree if they can see a dollar sign on it. And you know, if that's what needs to happen, then okay, but there's definitely needs to be some land set aside for Native people to be able to access it at all times.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's kind of been where our struggle has been, is land access to gathering sites. So that air base that I was mentioning earlier is a perfect place for that. That's kind of what the goal was for that area, is to knock everything out that's there, cleanse the land, and plant a forest of tan oak trees that our children can gather. And I know I won't see it in my lifetime, but hopefully the work will continue, and you know, one day there will be a place for our children to continue this beautiful tradition. And I'm just happy to be a part of that. I'm just a small part of that. So it's places like these that allow opportunity for me to share what I've done, and to kind of put those words in people's mouths as, oh, tan oak, acorn, to'o, you know, kind of understand that it is still very important. It's not just an old tradition, it's not just something we used to do, but it's something that we're trying to continue. And to be able to continue, we have to have the tree. We have to save this tree. So Mendocino County, you guys are voters. If you guys see things coming up that, you know, Measure V, things like that, when you hear things coming up, just pay attention to that, because there will be some movement coming pretty soon with action that we want to take. It's a long road and it's a hard fight, but we're not giving up. We do want to make sure that some safer forestry practices are implemented with all the forestry companies in Mendocino County and Humboldt County. But it's really hard. It's really hard to do. The foresters bring in the disease from other infected forests to non-infected forests, and there's no regulation on them to clean off machines. So these are just small things that could help. It's not a new disease, and it's not something that is spread by man. It could be in the wind, it could be in the water, but it definitely can be spread on machinery. So, you know, that's just one of the small things that we're asking for the Mendocino Redwood Company to kind of be more mindful of, is to clean machines before bringing them from infected areas to our clean forests. You know, because it's definitely something that's wiping out all our trees. It's very, very sad. And then they're doing the frilling, which is the intentional herbicide use. And, you know, they say they only do it on certain trees that aren't very large and not big, but there's nobody regulating that. There's nobody going out and making sure that that's what's happening. So that's kind of where tribes, I would hope, could come in the future. But then again, that takes education, that takes people educated in that, working within tribes. And sometimes as a tribe, we don't have that. The very few of our tribal members go to school for environmental things like that. You know, EPA, we do have those departments, but they're not always at capacity with the level of education that needs to be behind those positions to really make a difference in our communities. So we definitely always honor our Native people who are in school, that are pursuing that. And pushing toward that higher education to kind of come back into our communities and help us lead us into where we need to go. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you. I love hearing all these stories. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kile Kyle Whiterock. I'm a member of the Keo tribe of Indians. My pronouns are he, him, Baya. Baya means man in my language. I am currently the Native American Student Resource Center program specialist at Mendocino College, soon to be Native American Student Resource Center student retention specialist. Make sure our students are in school and that they stay in school and we help them achieve their success rate. I am learning every day about my culture. I didn't grow up learning ceremony or learning my practices, but I consider myself a student of life every day, and being around positive influences, mentors such as Bernadette and Bonnie, who I value so much, and being able to work in this environment, in this institute, getting to help influence other student success and Native students learning their culture and taking pride in that. I get my Whiterock name from my great-grandfather, Paul Whiterock, and I take pride in my last name. So I try to leave a good impact wherever I go. And I'm no expert by all means in terms of like plants, but I have a dream and I'm learning every day. But I'm here to speak upon my efforts at the college. And as soon as I got there, I was hired in March, at the end of March, and I like to say I made a good impact in the time I've been here, but working with Bonnie and working with our agriculture department too, this plan has been in the process for more than a year now. This project has been in the process for over more than a year now, longer than I've been here, and it's good to like be involved in this effort right now. So working with ag, we started working on this project, our medicine wheel garden project, and myself, Bonnie, and some of our student workers at the Native American Student Resource Center at the Ukiah campus have been working very closely on this project. I've taken everything that I've learned about the medicine wheel, medicinal plants and everything, and we wanted to create this collaborative effort to feel more involved with culture, especially for Native people. If you go to the next slide. So the medicine wheel in our culture, it's different depending on your tribe and everything, but I pulled this image offline, and it basically has like the same meanings as such too. Medicine wheel represents the importance of four. Four is a recurring theme throughout our life. It represents four colors: white, yellow, red, and black. They represent the four directions of Earth: north, south, east, and west. They represent four areas of health, whether it be spiritual, emotional, mental health, or physical health. It represents our four seasons: winter, spring, summer, and fall. It represents the four elements we have in life: water, fire, earth, and wind. And it can represent our four medicines we use commonly in ceremonies: sage, tobacco, sweetgrass, or cedar. So this is like a draft of like what it means to have like the medicine wheel. So we're using these colors to build upon a garden out of plot of land that we have at our agriculture department. I was working with our agriculture department and with my one of our student peer mentors. We were able to like get some early like design concepts of how we want our garden to be. So as we saw like in the previous slide, the medicine wheel, four corners represented by different colors: red, white, yellow, and black. So we wanted to have like a converging area in the garden here. Looking through a list of native plants used by local native Pomo tribe, we had a concept of having each corner of the direction represent the direction itself from the direction of where you're at on the college garden. Plots made up of yellow plants, red plants, black and white plants, medicinal herbs such as white sage, black walnut, elderberry, manzanita trees too. A wide variety of medicinal plants and herbs that we've been using throughout our lifetime and culture, and a wide variety too, so that when each season like comes to an end and there's not a sustainable environment for them plants to grow, there'll be a constant recycle of plant life to grow. We had this concept of having the four directions merging in the center, because in the center of the medicine circle that represents yourself too when you're learning. So imagine like a seating area too in the center there, where you can like be there and like pray and like just be involved, be surrounded by these important native plants here. And then from the sky, you'll have the whole representative medicine wheel, white, black, yellow, and red from the sky. So this is our early concept right now, made up of plants, flowers, trees, all healing. The next slide. Oh, okay. So this is like a general concept of our land that we have a good area right now. And in the picture is myself like gesturing to the land, being thankful. Yeah, I'm not even looking at the camera, but it's most important. I want to acknowledge my student worker, our peer mentor, Cecilia, and she's currently doing working hours at the agriculture department on campus, and she's really like a important resource for us. Works in like most of all of our departments there on Ukiah campus, and just really involved, really committed to the work. She's been working with them for the past 2 weeks now, 3 weeks. Very efficient, very hardworking. So pretty soon we're gonna be plotting the land, working more closely with agriculture to find out how we can actually lay out the blueprints and everything, get more involved, find the actual, define our plants and our planning for it, lay out the blueprints, the area, schemes, and we're going to be working on that soon. So hopefully by next semester or semester after, we'll have like a working garden and make some good progress for it. So, thank you.
Is that on the campus, Hensley Creek?
Yes, Ukiah campus, Hensley Creek.
Where's the disc golf in relationship to that?
This will be on like the once you're going, the disc golf campus will be on like the left side of the campus, the west side of the campus. This will be on the east, right by the Sonoma side, by the vineyard. So that's where that's where our garden is located, in our agriculture department. So yeah, it'll be on the east side of campus.
Holy cow. Right. I can stand up. I can hear my physical therapist telling me to stand up. Sintamana, Bonnie Lockhart, Anna, Kaipoma, Anna, K. Anna. Hello everyone, my name is Bonnie Lockhart and I'm a member of Sherwood Valley, but I'm also a descendant of Hopland, Yokayo, and Panolaville. I grew up on Panolaville tribe, which is over the creek from Mendocino College, really. I've walked there a couple times as a kid. The reason I mention that is actually because a lot of the plants that live at Mendocino College also live at my house. They are related to them and they share waterways with them, and so it's fun to be at Mendocino College. I've worked there almost 2 years now and recognize some of the plants that I grew up with at my house. Panolaville, I think, is the land that got past the government or something, because we have the best sunsets ever. Kelsey's nodding her head because she knows. We also have a creek that we could swim in growing up. The wormwood I gave you actually is from that creek. And the only problem is that other plants love living there so much that you constantly have to like tell those plants to leave your medicine plants alone and give them space. So I'm just really grateful to be here. I just want to say to Bernadette, like, I really appreciate you being here, and like while you were talking, I just kept feeling your dad. Like, I just felt him, like, you know, and I just feel like when I see you, I just feel so good. And I just want you to know, like, I really do. And, like, this generation that we're a part of is pretty cool. Nothing against any of our elders and the generation above us that, like, has been mentoring us, but, like, this is a pretty awesome generation that I feel honored to be a part of. So, and Kyle, thank you, really. Every time I sit next to you, I'm like, yes, Kyle works at the college. So I brought some things from home. Honestly, this is more of a show and tell than anything. I think it's really important to acknowledge our teachers. That's something I was always told. Like, if someone gives you something and teaches you something, you acknowledge them. So I'm holding in my hand actually a basket that was made by my cousin Christine Hamilton. She was from Yokeo. And this is a basket she made from willow down at the creek, maybe near Yokeo, probably, 'cause that's where she lived. It is unpeeled willow, and it smells really good. It feels really good to hold. It lives at my house with me because it was a gift to my mom that my mom left at my house when she moved out. I just bring this to you to share with you because Christine's actually continues to be a really important person to me. When I was young, I learned to weave with Christine with rattan, so like bamboo. She was teaching us all how to weave with like material that was easy to work with. And I remember as a kid feeling like this, I am good at this. It was like a moment I had. Like, I'm actually really good at this. And it was funny because if anyone knows Christine, like, she would make you take your basket out if it wasn't good. Like, you would have an almost a basket as big as this, and she'd take a look at it. I mean, imagine, like, I'm done. And then she'd be like, go back from here. And then you'd run back to wherever you were sitting and unravel it as fast as you could and go back from there and do it right, really, do it well. I really appreciate her for that because it made me a really pretty good weaver. And it made me eager to learn and get better. I'm grateful for that. So I share this with you because she was one of my original teachers. In my family, we had weavers before I was born. My grandmother, Esther Felis Lockhart, is from Hopland, but her mom is Mandy Knight, and she's from Yokeo. And she used to weave basket, and she used to talk pomo, and my grandma would tell me stories. She just passed, she was 97. She used to tell me a story that her mom would tell her, don't listen to us, and don't speak pomo, because you'll have an accent. You'll have an accent, and people make fun of you. And so in my family, on my grandma's side, like that was kind of the notion. Like, my children are not going to speak pomo. We're not going to speak pomo. We're not going to do pomo things. We're not going to do culture. Even on my grandfather's side, my grandfather's Francis Lockhart. From that side too, it was kind of like, we're not going to do these things. My grandmother, Gladys Lockhart, she was a Myers actually from Panolaville. She was a weaver, and people say all kinds of stuff about her in my family because she would sing songs and she would pray and she'd do pomo stuff. And my grandparents told her not to teach my dad anything about being pomo. So my grandparents agreed on something. They were later divorced, but they agreed. Their children would not learn how to do pomo. They would not learn culture. Another reason why I want to acknowledge Bernadette is your family actually continued to be active in the culture throughout your life and throughout your father's life. I know he learned from a very young age. Your community kept it going. And she mentioned the American Indian Religious Freedom Act of 1978. Similar to that, it's like just because a law is passed in 1978 doesn't mean the government starts implementing it. And it's on like us holding the government accountable to allow us to gather again, to allow us to sing our songs, like all of those things that people were sustaining in, like what I've been told sometimes is in the dark of the night, so that you don't get in trouble for gathering, and you don't get in trouble for singing, you don't get in trouble for dancing, and by trouble I mean killed or imprisoned, or even just the microaggressions that we call them now of being discriminated against. So I just really honor your family. I really thank your family. I really thank your region, because if you continue to learn about the coast, they're really generous people, and they've given Mendocino County a lot. They've given a lot to a lot of our tribes, a lot of the songs that we dance to. We're grateful for them.
Thank
you.
you.
Just honor you. Yeah, thank you.
you.
So I hold this here because Christine also learned to weave later in life. I know she was a niece of Elsie Allen, and Elsie taught her to weave, and then it kind of went to the wayside for a bit, and then she brought it back, and she did what Bernadette's doing. I know what I'm committed to. Kyle, I see you do it too. Giving it away. What we learn, we give it back. So I just wanted to bring her into here. I also have to honor some of my other teachers. So these are actually sticks Christine gathered just for the sake of seeing them. They're pretty old, but Rick, her husband, gave them to me because they were in their storage and he didn't have space for them. And I'm like, I'll take them, I'll bring them home. To the naked eye, I guess, these seem like just sticks rolled up in a piece of fabric, but these can be used later for basket. They're really special. They're very old. And this process of making sure these sticks are the right length and the right size and wrapped up the right way and they are stored somewhere safe is so special. I encourage it. If you can find something in your life that resembles that, so simple but so powerful, I just encourage you to find whatever that may be. These are also sticks that she gathered, I believe. These are peeled willow. And some of the baskets that she was gathering for before she passed away, she didn't get to weave. So, and Rick was like, I have extra. So these are also them. These are peeled willow. And eventually I'll weave them into something.
Bonnie, I could put some things under
Sure.
the camp so that people can see.
Sure. They can't smell them, but they can see them. This is something special to Mendocino College, Tim. I know. This actually came from our pond today at Mendocino College.
What is it?
It is a willow stick. But you wouldn't recognize it not in that form, right? But it is a willow stick that, it's late in the season. These plants, I was telling them earlier, me and Janet and Kyle and Cecilia and Lazaro, another student, we went and walked around for about an hour on campus. This isn't really the time I would gather this stuff, but I wanted to share this with you because this stuff grows among us, right? It looks like an ant actually came with us from Mendocino College. This is out there. This is on the side of the road. This is at the ocean. I mean, and sometimes they actually look like giant trees because there were so many years there where our ancestors weren't gathering as often, weren't tending as often. So there's a lot out there, and I just wanted to share that with you. It's so magnificent. I don't know, when you isolate a piece of something like this, like look how like tall it is and strong. I've gotten to know these plants a lot because even though Christine passed on before I could start weaving with traditional material, Corinne Pierce has been a huge teacher of mine around plants. Mia Rufo is often available for a conversation. Patty Franklin loves to talk about plants. You find people who love to talk about acorns and plants. It's like they'll just share and share and share and share. Buffy Schmidt is another one who's taught me about plants, Christine's daughter. These are some more willow sticks. I wanted to bring them to show you the color. I feel like it's so beautiful to see the color of this stick and to see its texture. Like I said, this is late in the season, so there's a lot of new kind of shoots that are growing. There's some branches that are growing. I was sharing with them that these sticks won't be as strong because they have the extra notches in them and the shoots that are making kind of the full stick weak. People still use them, of course, but I know that if you gather a stick before all this happens, it will be smoother because there won't be any like shoots coming out of it. I used to think, and I remember talking to Mio about this all the time, that I'm gonna hurt the willow plant. I'm gonna cut it wrong. It's not gonna grow back. I just know it. She'd be like, stop being so scared. Just cut it down and it'll come back. And I'm just like, no, it won't. And just feeling so nervous that like, because the basket weaving and the gathering and the tending had kind of stopped in my family, that I was somehow unworthy of tending the plants and taking care of them. And I think, where I've learned a lot about plants has actually been gathering sedge. So I had Kyle and Cecilia and Janet, I believe, jumped in on that adventure as well. Work with Jake, Kyle in our garden. Shout out to Jake because Jake is so extremely helpful. To bring some native plants that our garden grows. So we have a wonderful ag program. If you've ever had the opportunity to check it out, I encourage you to go back many times. They grow native plants and they grow basket plants, which is pretty awesome for us. And so they grow sedge. And this is a sedge that probably would love to be separated from itself because sedge likes to move. Sedge can run, a healthy sedge plant can run about this length. People gather sedge roots that are like this long. I'm told they're called rhizome roots. Hi, Tomasio. They're called rhizome roots. And so you gather the root in between the two plants. and that's how you get these. These are actually pretty small sedge. These are sedge that I processed. I gathered this near the Russian River. There's a property that we can access there, but it's of course adjacent to a vineyard, which we're pretty sure has the spraying happening. But McCarricker State Park is a really fun place to get lost in and find beautiful plants. So what's special about sedge is that you have to go 2 to 3 feet into the earth, sometimes less if you have some good soil, to get to the root. And when you get down there, there's a lot going on down there. And usually the plants are overlapping each other, they're cutting each other off. If the sedge is growing near a walnut tree, walnut trees are very assertive underground, and they're like cutting off the sedge, and then there's centipedes too. And so kind of what Bern was talking about with the acorn, it's the same with plants. Like, we don't always go down into the earth just to gather. You go down into the earth to take care of those plants and to visit with them, to talk to them. I always think like the plants are waiting for us. Mm-hmm. They're waiting for us to remember who they are, learn how we can take care of them and connect with them, and they're just waiting for us to come back. They know we're coming back. We promised them we'd be back. So when we go in, I feel like that's super spiritual too. And I sometimes just go and like talk to the plants. This one will probably go back to ag, but I have one at home that I'm going to plant, and I'm going to create a sedge bed and start tending it. But this, once gathered, has to be split, peeled, and then cured for at least a year before you can use it. So if you're going to weave a basket, you have to prepare years in advance to finish your basket. And you have to love gathering and gather a lot, or have a lot of people who love you and want to help you gather for your basket, because it's a lot of material. You'd think that those bundles would go far, but really that may be a full basket, may not. You'll see those little ones. I wanted to share with you, I have a little basket situation here thanks to Susan Billy, who I bothered enough to teach me how to weave. My sister and I started to learn from her, and so she's been teaching us how to coil. This one is made of sedge, and I've been working on this off and on for the past couple years, waiting for my sedge to cure. So I've been working on it more consistently because my hands get busy doing other things like typing and beading and talking. So I have to make time for this. I think that's also a teaching of the land, is that we have to make time for it, and sometimes it means we can't like do the other thing that people would like us to do, or hang out as long as we'd like, because it takes hours to really be there and do it. So I just want to share this with you, the beginning of my basket, and hopefully the next time we see each other, it'll be bigger. Excuse me. I also, because I started doing these things in my family, then my family started noticing that I was doing them. And so when my aunt was cleaning out my grandmother's house, she found my great-grandmother Mandy's awl that you use for basket. And so I now have my great-grandma Mandy's awl that she would use to weave basket. Maybe not her only one, but one that lived at my grandma's house. And so then something came back to me, because I started to pay attention and weave and make time for that. Then something special from my family came back to me. And this is actually looks like it's carved out. It's probably hand carved. It looks old. And maybe a nail or like a pin here. I know Susan Billy's awl is her grandmother's awl, and it's made from the end of a parasol. Mm-hmm. So at the time, people are kind of putting things together. This is more important than I ever realized it would be. And I also never realized how important a knife would be to me. I don't think I ever thought I would be, I never thought I would be so excited about a knife, but I think I actually got this knife when I was in Hawaii. I was walking by it and I was like, oh, that one's mine. And this helps me to clean my sedge, cut little things as I'm doing them. I try not to, when possible, even use clippers. It's hard with willow not to use clippers. But one of the teachings when you're gathering is that you're talking to the plant and you're asking permission to take from that plant. I sometimes feel like when I'm using a clipper, it's so I've decided I'm taking you. And it's not really is this okay with you? So I spend a lot of time bending that branch and talking to the plant while I'm thinking about taking it. in that kind of giving permission or asking permission and seeing if the plant's willing to give it. It's a lot easier to do that with plants like bay laurel or pepperwood. You can feel the tension between the different branches if that one wants to come with your fingers. A little harder with willow. I do the same thing with this medicine here. This is wormwood, and wormwood. This wormwood doesn't look too happy to me. I'm not an expert in why it doesn't look too happy, but doesn't look too happy. It's looking kind of yellow and it's kind of dying. It might need more space. That could be what's going on. The wormwood that grows in my creek sometimes grows about this tall. And then these were the little babies that I didn't want. Then my cousins walked down to the creek and then their dogs and their feet like trample it. So I went down and like got those too and then made little bundles out of them so that they were honored because they gave themselves this year. They were there. And so with wormwood, I spent a lot of time with the same thing, talking to it, seeing it. If I were to harvest from this plant, this is not the time of year to do so because for some reason this one isn't seeding, but it is the time of year when they're seeding. I would look and see which ones look okay to come, and then I would take a few from here, but not a lot, to sustain the well-being of this plant. So when it does choose to go to seed, it will continue to generate like more around it. We have a really sweet little patch of this at Mendocino College behind the little theater, and it's actually grown over the past couple of years. Like it started out about this big, and I think today we saw it. It was like the length of this table and up the hill, and no one else harvests it pretty much besides us, so it's not really going anywhere, which is special to see, like it generating. I wanted to share this with you because I think sometimes white sage is often really common in our community, and so this is of course the white sage plant also. This one's been living with me, so I take responsibility for it not looking too great, but it probably got too much water, to be honest. This, white sage when it's dry looks this way. Wormwood when it's dry looks this way, and I would say between the two plants we're more familiar with the white sage because it has become commercialized, right? And it has become more accessible. I will say this one was harvested from someone's garden. What's interesting that I learned, because I grew up with white sage in my house, that was one of the medicines we lived with growing up, is that often this plant is growing like in hotter climates further south. And then what I learned also about wormwood, though, is that wormwood grows in Mexico, too. So it's interesting because wormwood actually spans our whole state. And I've found it lots of places. Even when I was up in Humboldt County this last weekend, I was like, oh, hey, hi, wormwood. And to see it up there was just like, wow, it's really special. There's something about smell, sight, touch, like feeling like you're seeing familiarity in plants that I consider them to be relatives to. So when I see them places, like you would see a relative that you're connected to in your community, it's like, hey, you're here too. It's so special. I feel like once you can see things, it like enhances your experience as a human. It's just like, wow, I'm a human like in an environment. I live on this planet. There's living things around me and beside me that I'm in relationship with. Interesting, my mother and father both went to UC Santa Cruz in the 70s, so I hear some hippie things come out of me sometimes, and I'm like, yeah, it was destiny. It was going to happen no matter what. Sometimes you're like, oh, came out of me. But we know that there are some commonalities, of course, between what might be considered hippie philosophies, environmental philosophies, and indigenous people. Like, we can agree on lots of stuff. Yeah. I just want to bring this plant in, too. It's a newer plant that I'm getting to know. This is the red dogwood. It says redwig, but I know that there's botany terms. What's cool about this plant, I don't know if you knew this, Tim, I know I'm making a lot of eye contact with you, is that we have a huge situation of this at Mendocino College next to the science building, next to the shady part of the building. We have a lot of this happening there. And this is used sometimes in baby basket. I believe it has other uses too, for color and different uses. I'm still learning what this offers. But I think that's the beauty of it all, is like I feel like as I've been coming to know certain plants and knowing like their uses and what they do, then like, okay, I feel like I'm familiar with you and I know what you're about, and then coming to kind of be acquainted and understand what other plants do as well. It's so beautiful. I just think that as a plant, it's just so stunning. lastly, I just want to share something that we decided to collect today, because it's all around that pond. I swore it was Thule, and then we got closer, and I was like, of course it's cattails. And what's interesting is that we all kind of were just talking about the cattail. Like, maybe, I think we ate this, maybe someone ate this, we're not really sure. Wonder what we would do with it. Cecilia knows a lot about plants, so she was talking about the root system and maybe some uses from the root system. We hesitated to gather the root. I didn't want us to waste the root. I know we can use some of this top part to start fire. Once this dries out, if we want to simply use it as like tinder to begin a fire, we could do that. So trying not to gather things that we're just going to waste, like not just for the sake of gathering them, but for the sake of using them. So I just, wanted to take that time today to share these things with you, because like Kyle was sharing with you all about our garden project, we're learning more about plants as we go along. There are plants that we're going to bring in to our garden that then I think we're going to be responsible for taking care of too, and not just like plopping in the ground and watering, because it's not that simple. For example, like the elderberry trees, they're going to be young for a long time. We may not be the ones who are harvesting those berries or using them for different uses, but I think that taking care of them at their early stages and making sure that there is a legacy of that, of taking care of that medicine garden and knowing the seasons for each and every plant and our responsibility to that. I was sharing with them today, like, we did a little bit of when we found a plant that wasn't doing well. I really want to do something to this plant, but I know it's not my place. You would take the dead off of the plant. You would kind of manicure the plant a little bit. You would check and see if there's anything that is dying in here that needs to kind of be taken out. Anything that is preventing that plant from like growing, and kind of be courageous in that sense, that like you are the one who showed up today. And for sedge and basket spaces, there's often this tale that like, you're not supposed to gather from someone else's basket spot. You're not supposed to take their materials. That could be someone's place. But the more you get to know plants, the more you can tell like whether or not someone's actually been there in a while. And so the fear of like, oh, I shouldn't do anything because I don't know if this is someone's sedge patch, becomes more clear. You'll start to know, oh, cool, someone took care of that spot right there. Here's 4 feet of space that like I'm going to take care of, and take responsibility for, because there is a lot to do. I mean, we can't possibly gather all the acorns that are falling without having an actual organized, coordination around dedicating that time that it takes. And it means that we won't be going to every birthday party or, everything that comes up. It means maybe that we have to take time off work to do so. I know that those are some things that have happened in the past where you have to miss for ceremony because it's time for those things to happen. So I put that out there because I think that as we all have our spheres of influence, one of the spheres of influence that I think Bernadette was talking about is if you do have access to land, or you do know that there are spaces where people can gather, that people do want to know about them. They do want to feel welcome. Myself, I've been gifted like the code to someone's gate so that I can get in. I just text them when I'm going over there and they say, okay, great, thank you, have fun. And that trust that Indigenous and Native people of this land, we know how to take care of things without hurting them. And if we're coming to tend a space, it's because we're coming in a good way, in a respectful way. I know that sometimes when you're gathering other things, people are like, don't leave holes, don't do this, don't do that. And I think that there's an educational component that could exist as well around like reintroducing our communities to these ways of doing things, that they aren't like destructive, and that they resemble what sometimes in the Ohlone Way book that Heyday Books published, like California was a perfectly manicured garden all across the state. And the secret to that is that the California Indians were tending it that entire time before all this industrialization and all this change that happened. So I think like PG&E's fires, like other things that have happened that have been pretty catastrophic, I think Native people who are knowledgeable would be willing to lend support. I also think that if there's infrastructure and like supports that could be built around like really getting strategic about how it is that we're going to bring us back to a place that I know we can be, because the willow apparently would be okay with it, right? The willow would be okay. yes, it's a magnificent tree. It would be okay if it went back to being some shoots that we could use. And then it would mean also that we could spend more time with them. I think there's a lot of spaces that could benefit from some stewarding that even now they're so overgrown, we're not even able to be present with them in the way that we could be. I always share with those that I know tend land, like how much respect I have for them myself. Like I spend a lot of time at work. Mendocino College takes a lot of my time working and emailing and meeting, and I love it all, but also when I can get hours out on the land, usually on my weekends, sometimes as a part of our roles, we get to go gather. I think it's really important. So making space for that. If I can encourage you to find whatever part of that you play, whatever small part that you play, whatever big part you can play, I think it will help us to heal our communities. That's always the ask, like, what do we do? Give me those 3 things that we can do to like reconnect with the community and make a difference. And I think it's got to be consistent, whatever it is. And I think that let this not be the moment we're talking. Let this be the kickoff. Let this be the inspiration, the reminder, maybe the opportunity to connect after this and find ways that we can continue to do this together, because we're ready. And I think it's all part of those prayers that have been laid down before we even got here, this generation that I'm excited to be a part of, that we got here, that we're able to continue to move us forward.
Oh. Just a little context on that sound. Some of you are familiar with it, but we do say "oh." It's a California native expression of gratitude and appreciation. So we do say it after prayer. We say it after we like something we hear, anything. So that's just kind of what that appreciation we keep showing each other is. So instead of like clapping, it's "oh." We say it. And the louder, the better.
Oh. Yeah. Well, thank you all very much. We do have time for questions. If anyone has questions, Jody.
I actually have a really basic question about what we were just talking about "oh." So as a non-native, is it appropriate to say it, or is that weird?
It's appropriate.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. If we were at like a big time, so those are cultural gatherings, what people in California we call big times, like similar to what powwow might be for other out of state, we call it out of state Indians. So we say it, instead of clapping. So we encourage everybody there to kind of join in on that. And it wasn't until, not like the 80s or so, or early 90s, that we really started hearing it more. And as the Native people, we let everybody know this is what we want you to do, say "oh." So I watch old videos, and it was a lot of clapping. Even from Native people, it was like at the end of a dance. And now if that would happen, it'd be like, what? It's strange. So "oh" is a perfect way to join in and show appreciation, non-Native and Native alike.
I had a question for you, Bernadette. It's just like spelling to'o.
Oh, so T-O, and then I would put a hyphen and then H-O.
Okay, that's how
Yeah.
I put it, but I just wanted to know the actual spelling.
Yeah, and that's the soup. So once it's processed and made, yeah. Yeah, and I just want to give you guys a little tip. If you guys are going out gathering this season, so now's the time, as you see the acorns on the ground. If you're out gathering, if you see an acorn, I thought I brought some in, but on what I call the top where the cap would be, right there, that little circle, if it's a bright white, especially if it's a tan oak, this color white, that it's a good acorn ready to go. Any discoloration around that circular area, any brown, you're gonna have a rotten acorn inside. That took a lot of years for me to realize that when I first started gathering. I bring so many home, just picking up, and a lot of them would be wasted, because they wouldn't be good or they'd be empty. So that just took practice and getting to know the acorn and stuff. So once that happened, I'm happy to share that piece of information with people because it'll cut half the work out. So that's pretty much, don't pick up an acorn unless it has that bright white. And that's specifically for tan oak. I'm sure it's for the other ones as well. You just don't want to see any discoloration around the cap and where the cap would be. And then no holes, of course. Anything with a hole, don't pick that up because there's the weevil has made its way in or out. And then if you can see a little brown dot, which maybe look like a beauty mark or something, that may be potentially a weevil coming out. So I wouldn't touch those either.
Do you have recipes online, or how do we find that?
Yeah, so if you go on YouTube, you can look up Bernadette Smith, like acorn processing. There are a few that I show myself doing it. The quality of the videos, this was like when COVID was first happening, they weren't that great. But yeah, there are different videos on there that show the process. I teach mine in a contemporary form. Like I said, I use the Ninja blender. That's the best one. That, and I also use different things like these metal rounds are called sieves. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of them. They're like a screen and metal rounds. That's where I leach the acorns. So that's where you make it into the powder and you run the water through it for about 8 hours. Yeah, I still haven't realized or got to see exactly how many gallons that goes through, but that's kind of what I've been working on, is more of like the exact science of how much water runs through, so I can let people know what to expect as far as like people living in the city. And it all kind of depends. You'll see a discoloration depending on the treatment of your water, of where you are in the city. Sometimes you'll see a pink discoloration on top of the acorn, which is really scary. You can see a purple or green film discoloration. It all just depends on the water treatment happening in your area. Also, that might change the taste depending on if you're outside using like a hose. If it's a new hose, you can get like a plastic taste. It's very, very tricky to get the right what you're looking for. So I can't really imagine one being from a fresh stream water.
Right.
That's where I'm like, where does that taste like? It probably tastes really good. Yeah, so I'm drinking, eating, stuff from pipes. So I can't imagine what something like pure stream fresh water would taste like. But so don't be discouraged. You could just take that little piece off or that layer off. That's what I do.
So we have a Zoom question. How can you tell which trees are tan oaks?
Oh, okay, so tan oaks have a specific leaf. So you'll see they're kind of elongated. They're about 3 inches long. They're pretty big, and they have pokey edges all the way. So it's like a feather type shape. I don't know the exact scientific word for it. I should, but nobody probably would know anyways if I said it. So so other oak trees have these dips that go in. A lot of them have shapes like that. The tan oak has just like smooth except pokey, so not smooth. They no indentions of the leaves at all. Also, our caps are a little bit different. So every acorn has a different cap that kind of gives the identity of that acorn. And there's a lot of stories in Pomo storytelling that tell about how you can identify the person by the cap and how Creator gave the cap to each tribe. Ours is a crazy hair cap. So the tan oak has spikes all over the top of their cap. They're the only one who have those spikes, so that's definitely an identifier. Also, our trees, mature tree is super tall. It's the second tallest tree next to the redwood, although you wouldn't know that because there's none that are that big anymore. Everything's, really small. So, and those big ones are probably buried somewhere deep in land that we don't have access to. But they're very tall. All the other oak trees, they could be tall, but they kind of branch really low, so you kind of know for sure if it's branching low, it's not a tan oak tree.
I had a question about elderberry. You said it may take a while before it produces the actual berries. I have some starts that are still small. Do I just let those grow for a while until they produce, or do I cut them back at the end of the season, or how does that?
Yeah, to my knowledge, you let them grow.
Just let them
They'll
grow?
just continue to become a bigger tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are they in the ground?
A couple of them are.
Cool. Yeah. What I think I heard Jake say is that they grow pretty fast, faster than we believe they will. But just, continuing to water them and taking care of them.
I've heard once they're probably more full grown, that they do trim them back every year.
Mm-hmm.
Cut them back, but
Yeah, I know.
Until then, just let them go.
Yeah, I know that, you know, a lot of times the shoots from the elderberry will make the long, smooth wood for clappers, right?
Yeah.
And so those can be cut, and then I think it would regenerate. I'm not sure how soon that happens, but I think that similar to the willow, it will know that when you cut from it, that then energy can go again through the tree. Yeah, but I think you'll be able to gauge that based on the size of the wood itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh,
I had a question about food insecurity. And so, especially when you were talking about the medicinal properties of the acorn and all that, but it used to be a staple as well.
mm-hmm.
And here in Lake County, where we're dealing with a native fish, the lake hitch, which you've probably heard about, or chai, also mentioned in our Lake Como peoples that used to be a major source of food, similar to how the salmon was coastal. But one thing I noticed in your discussion was like, it's a hard enough fight just to get enough people educated how to make it and save the tradition, much less get enough of it that it could be reintroduced as a food staple, much less a rarity. And the same question I have here is, our local tribes are fighting so hard, so EPAs, super important. If your EPAs need beefing up, please do. They've been hugely effective this year. But in this struggle that is going to be ongoing, and it is going to be a struggle. Right now we're trying to figure out what the water board is going to do with our well regulations and stuff like that. But we're a long cry from saying we would ever be able to restore the chai to a fishery, as opposed to just something that isn't going extinct. So within your people, is there any notion that we have any ability or even vision that we could someday restore such a plenitude of acorns or a plenitude of fish that we could not only save the culture but also reintroduce the idea of food security?
That's where I think a big discussion around land back comes in. We definitely need land in order to sustain that, or to even make it so that there is enough for people to have on a daily if they wanted. But that's something that there's movement in that, and I'm optimistic about it happening. We do have a little bit better chance, I'd say. I mean, the hitch, that's kind of like it's not a small lake, but it's, it is what it is. That's all you get. As far as the tan oak, we do have opportunity to regain lands and start that process. But as far as like the sudden oak death, there are some, UC Berkeley is doing extensive research on how to make a stronger tree that's more, or not as susceptible to sudden oak death. So I definitely see some opportunity for regeneration.
Are you doing stuff at Hopland Station with it?
I not with the tan oak, but with other oak trees they are. The tan oak is more susceptible to sudden oak death because the bark splits, so that allows that disease to enter into it. So the other trees have a little bit more chance because their bark doesn't do that. Yeah, but also I just don't want to forget to mention cultural burning and how important that is in the protection of the tan oak trees as well, and of course healthy forests. But that's just again, something that we were continuing to learn more about as a Native people, kind of reintroducing that into our educational practices as far as a people, and then we'd like to see that be brought out into the communities, especially in Mendocino County. But it's kind of scary because of the heavy forest and the dead trees that are there to kind of do that, but we definitely are moving forward in that as well.
If I just can offer thanks, I do represent the County Lake for this district in a settler kind of way, but I do appreciate the land acknowledgement. I appreciate so much Mendocino College putting on this series, and every time I come, it's not every time, but I feel bad about my cultural incompetence, but I also feel hopeful that I do look at your generation and also my colleagues. We have 2 natives on the board, and I hope you look at them as resources, because really where your generation is going to make progress, not just in the groovy stuff, but getting in and digging up the roots of our governance and fighting those fights educating us, you know, one person at a time, one day at a time. I love that garden idea. You know, if you could get garden here at this campus after you're done with that one. that would be such an important first step. You know? just if you're doing a drive-by. Okay, one at a time.
We'll see what we can do.
So I have a Zoom question. It is a robust year for acorn production. Aside from the obvious that it might be a good year to gather, is there a seasonal or spiritual message based in culture for years of good production?
Well, there is what is like to be known as cycles of acorn production. We believe, like he was talking about, the four sacred number. That's kind of the belief system that our people has accepted or learned to know. So if it's 4 years, this person is saying it's a good production year, it would be it'd be safe to say that in another 4 years it would be another big production year for the acorn. Yeah, so gather if that's the case, and it just depends. You know, it does depend, I believe, maybe on the type of acorn. You know, so I know in the past every year hasn't been that good. Things are kind of slowing down, but when you do see a big production year, it's definitely time to store, because they can last up to 7 years or longer in the shell, and you have to store them properly in order for them to dry in a good way in the shell, which is a whole nother learning, you know, process within itself. But if it does become a huge production year, you want to gather as much as you can, because you don't know, you can't expect that to happen the next year. It'll slow down significantly.
Because of the drought years that we've had, has this made a major impact?
It definitely has made a major impact, but I have seen that some of the fires that have happened in other areas have made a mass production happen. Yeah, in those trees. So as we know, fire is medicine. It's great for you know, the earth. So when that does happen, I've seen a huge boost in acorn production in those fire areas, which was amazing to see.
How you said there's different types of acorns. I've made acorn mush before when I was a little girl, but is that like is there like a certain acorn that you use for that, or does it just depend on what
Yeah, so every tribe, it's depending on the regional area, has a specific acorn that mostly they favored to use. Well, it's depending on what was available in their area. So there's valley oak, there's live oak, black oak, blue oak, tan oak, and that all depends on different, like coastal live. It just depends on where your geographical area is at. Not to say that any one is better than the other per se, but tan oak has been known to be the most delicious, and I think it's because the tannins seem to be less. The darker the acorn shell is, seems to have the more tannins inside, and the tannins is what makes it be super bitter. So the tan oak is the lighter of all the acorns, therefore not having as much tannins in, and it's easier to leach. And a lot of people pull the plug early when the leaching process happens, because it takes so long, you know, and it's really something to be perfected. You kind of got to do a little bit of a test on your acorn before you start putting in the big pot and adding the water. You do a little bit from the middle, you know, mix it in the water and test it to see the bitterness there, because you don't want to waste your whole pot and it be bitter. But some people like more bitter, some people like, you know, none at all. And if you're a first timer, I like to make sure mine's not bitter at all, because I don't want to turn anybody off from it. So I kind of make sure I do extra leaching, you know, make sure that there's no bitterness in it. A good way to reintroduce it to people, I've learned, is to make it what atole. I don't know if anybody's familiar with what atole is. I'll add a little bit of milk, cinnamon, and sugar and make it more drinkable, and people really like that. And it's just a good way to get the acorn back into our bodies. One project I'm working on right now is baby food. So I'm trying to, because I've made big jars, but a lot of people, they'll take it, but they don't really like it, and it's so much work if they don't eat it. I'm like, I'm done giving people big jars. So little jars are good for people to test it, but that's a great way to re-indigenize our children's palates because they're so used to everything else, like trying to give them acorn mush as a 5-year-old, they're like, bleh. You know, I've seen them like act like it's the most, you know, it's crazy to see that. So giving it to them early as possible, I'd say about, 6 months, 9 months, getting it in their system that way as an early child, I think is the best way to start re-indigenizing our future natives. It's the only way. You try it later on and you're like, what is, it's tasteless.
Could you repeat what the acorn tastes like from the tan oak? I think our Zoom people didn't quite get it.
Okay, so the tan oak has less tannins, which is the bitterness flavor in the acorn. So they are easier to leach, which is the process of taking the bitterness out. And a lot of people don't continue the leaching process so long as they should. So if you don't want to do it that long, use the tan oak because it speeds up the process. And a lot of Native people do say, well, not even just for my tribe, that the tan oak is the better of them all. I have to keep saying it over and over. It's the best. And then that's what's a shame about it because it's going away. It's going to be extinct eventually, I would say. I heard somebody from UC Berkeley come out and talk about the tan oak and sun oak death, and within the next 100 years, it'll be gone. And that's not very much time. And when you think about it, like we think 7 generations, that's 2, and that's it. So that's kind of why the fight is a little bit more urgent for us to kind of restore, protect the tan oak tree. And honor. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go.
I know.
Sorry, I'm kind of doing Zoom and doing my own questions at the same time. Is the tan oak also found up in the Pacific Northwest, or is it just here?
So Mendocino County primarily, but it also goes as far as Humboldt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's none in Lake County, right?
I did see one coming over from Hopland to here. I did see one tan oak. There's probably more, but I did see one. So they might be around here. Yeah.
On the Mendocino side or the lake side?
I would say Mendocino side.
Yeah.
They know where the county boundary is.
Yeah, it's very top of the mountain, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's another country.
Yeah, so there's a thing we've done working with the Candlestick Nursery out in San Francisco. We took a lot of acorns from those old grandmother trees in Point Arena, and they germinated about 100 of them, and they all sprouted into little trees, where we then went and planted them back at the air base. Unfortunately, they lock it up, and we're only allowed on with supervision, so it wasn't a really as good of a process as we wanted, but it's definitely was like a learning situation where we know this could happen, and if in the future, if we want to work together with the nursery at Mendocino College, where we can have people maybe plant them out in their yards, or if they have property, get them those trees. So especially it's a good way to honor the grandmother trees that are maybe dying a sudden oak death, their last fall production. We could that's my theory, is we keep those alive in that sense by making new trees from them. So that's kind of my thinking on that, my hope for those trees.
I know we're close to time, but I just wanted to say that Jake and the Ag Department, they're going to do an acorn activity at our Native Heritage event on November 15th. And they have the process of putting the acorns in water and seeing which ones sink and which ones float, and the ones that sink are the ones that will become the tree. And so they then plant those, and they give people trees. So
Oh, beautiful.
yeah, I think most of the trees come from our campus, and I haven't seen a tan oak on our campus yet. I haven't been able to find one, so we should definitely continue to talk about what that could look like, because I know they're into this kind of thing. So
That sounds like a great collaboration.
yeah.
Well, I want to thank our wonderful panel for an absolutely fantastic presentation.